Have you ever observed how the pursuit of fulfillment permeates all aspects of our lives? Happiness appears to be promised by every alert, every acquisition, and every new pleasure, yet it always eludes us, as though it were an unachievable goal. What do we actually want to find? Are we being duped by false promises, or is this rush for pleasure the way to something bigger? What if the way pleasure is used to manipulate us is the true problem, not the absence of it? Are we unwittingly giving up our independence for fleeting pleasures that imprison us? Aldous Huxley predicted in his book Brave New World that oppression would occur in a world where oppression would be brought about by excessive comfort rather than suffering. Aren't we living the dystopia he portrayed in this day and age of immediate gratification and never-ending diversions? Pleasure appears to be associated with the concept of freedom, but to what degree is this true? Furthermore, how can we tell the difference between genuine freedom and tyranny masquerading as comfort? This contemplation prompts us to ask, are we only puppets in a system that controls our wants and needs, or do we have the ability to make deliberate decisions? What if, rather than having freedom, we are caught in a never-ending loop of instant gratification, where each pleasure distances us from our actual purpose and freedom? If you've previously observed that your decisions may be influenced by instant gratification, it's time to consider how we may alter this. Would you mind starting now and telling us how you plan to redefine pleasure in your daily life? Let's discuss more purposeful ways of coexisting after you leave a remark below. Social media platforms are made to constantly capture our interest. A sense of control is suggested by each notice, like, or new video, as though we were choosing what we wanted to see at any particular time. But do we actually have control over the decisions we make? How often do you find yourself eating material you weren't even aware you were seeking for while aimlessly scrolling the screen? Are we truly making a decision, or are we merely responding to a never-ending barrage of recommendations? We might be losing touch with our actual liberty as a result of this instant gratification. When was the last time you stopped to think without getting sucked into a brand new diversion? We are drawn in by a viral video, a new series, or an alluring promotion. The seeming freedom of choice turns into a convenience masquerading as enjoyment. We gradually drift away from what is really important, the ability to make clear decisions and act on our true desires. Instead, a series of impulses are directing us, frequently in the direction of what the system desires, rather than what we must do in order to live a purposeful life. The manipulation of pleasure, not pleasure per se, is the issue. Pleasure is a tool, but it loses its true worth when we allow it to control us. We must learn how to recover our actual capacity for choice and why we are so ready to embrace this form of freedom that comes with consuming instant gratification. We'll look at how this cycle of constant pleasure-seeking is a biological problem rather than merely an external one in the next section. The neurotransmitter dopamine, which controls our urges and desires, is essential to comprehending this process. What happens if this brain chemical takes us hostage? Let's examine how dopamine keeps us caught in a never-ending, insatiable cycle of desire. Now that we have a better understanding of how instant gratification affects us, it is time to examine the brain, which is the foundation of this search. The chemical message that drives us to look for rewards is dopamine, but who actually controls this search? Dopamine does not directly cause pleasure, unlike what many people believe. We constantly strive for the next reward because it makes us think that the next click or purchase would satisfy us. However, the contradiction is evident. Pleasure seems to elude us more and more the more we look. The promise of fulfillment, not the fulfillment itself, is what motivates us to continue. Imagine yourself chasing after something, never quite making it, but always coming close. Many of us go through this every day without even realizing it. Like a hamster on a wheel, everything in our environment is made to keep us moving forward. Games, social media, and even online shopping are all made to take advantage of dopamine and keep us caught in this vicious loop. However, why does this occur? Dopamine has historically aided in human survival by encouraging us to look for necessities like food and shelter. But in the modern world, artificial rewards that provide continuous and quick gratification have ensnared us. This pleasure lures us along an infinite path, much like an unreachable pot of gold. Now consider your daily existence. How often do you check your phone when you don't actually need anything? When we no longer find anything interesting, why do we continue to watch it? Even in the absence of a clear objective, dopamine produces such a powerful reaction that it motivates us to keep going. The most intriguing aspect is that our brain requires a stronger stimuli to produce the same result the more we search. This is the cycle of tolerance that permeates many aspects of our life, from eating to using social media to find approval. We find ourselves more and more caught up in a cycle that we are unaware of. Our relentless need for instant gratification is reinforced by the rapid rewards that are shown to us with each screen swipe and click. But who is actually in charge of what we do as we go along? How many times have you picked up your phone without thinking, impulsively, or repeated an action even though you knew it wasn't necessary? These seemingly little decisions reveal a system that is more complex than we may think. The true difficulty is not just in pursuing fleeting pleasures, but also in distancing ourselves from what ought to be our top priorities. We become so engrossed in chasing after fleeting joys that we eventually lose the capacity to consider what it is that we truly desire. Distractions becoming more alluring every second, robbing us of something essential: the capacity to make deliberate decisions about our lives. However, what does this reveal about our culture? This constant pursuit of pleasure has significant effects on the structure of society in addition to our own perceptions. Pleasure is transformed into a potent tool of control by the system designed to keep us occupied and pleased, changing both our resistance and how we perceive the world. Our ability to critically evaluate our behaviors is eroding, and entertainment has supplanted leisure as the primary means by which we comprehend the world. We enjoy ourselves in a culture where everything is designed to divert us, but we have also been taken hostage by this paradigm. Our autonomy is ultimately consumed by the incessant consumption of experiences, goods, and content. We live in a cycle where what keeps us interested is more important than what is pertinent or helpful. This has a direct impact on how we see politics, education, and even interpersonal relationships. We lose depth and purpose when every aspect of our lives starts to be viewed as a show. Consider how many hours you spend amusing yourself. How many of them are merely a means of escape, or do they actually improve your life? The barrage of stimuli sneaks up on you from every angle. Articles, videos, and social media are all made to keep us moving and prevent us from pausing to think. Curiously, we also become more estranged from ourselves, the more we attempt to fill our gaps with these diversions. Who is taking control of our life despite the constant entertainment that is driving us? Are we responding to a flow that carries us away without our knowledge? Or are we making decisions? Byung-Chul Han, a philosopher, describes the society of fatigue, a state in which we are unable to think clearly or act deliberately due to an excess of stimuli. Explicit control and censorship are no longer necessary. The most hazardous thing about distractions is that we are unaware of how much we are losing out on. Distractions themselves serve to deflect us from important matters. How often do you carry on a conversation without taking a quick glance at your phone, or remain silent for a while without adding anything from the outside? Being busy has become practically a responsibility in our society, and distraction has evolved into an imperceptible control mechanism. It keeps us from reflecting on the true nature of the world around us and, more significantly, on who we are in the midst of it. Though we rarely pause to consider the effects this has on our lives, we live in a world where we are constantly linked, sharing moments, appreciating, and responding. Do we actually make our own decisions, or are we only responding to the constant pressures placed upon us? We must comprehend how it impacts our ability to make decisions if we are to escape this cycle of continual distraction. The true difficulty is how this constant pursuit of instant satisfaction gets in the way of our capacity to discover something more profound, a purpose. We are unable to truly question ourselves what we want out of life when we live solely for pleasure. In an atmosphere where the concept of suffering is shunned at all costs, how can we find purpose for our lives? In his book, In Search of Purpose, Viktor Frankl makes the obvious argument that finding purpose in life, even during difficult times, is more important than avoiding suffering. However, we have abandoned the idea of aiming for something more, something valuable, in a society where everything is made to provide us with uncomplicated pleasure. When we have quick access to everything, effort seems odd, superfluous, and nearly forgotten. Consider a moment when you attempted to begin something significant, such as learning something new, committing to a project, or developing a genuine relationship with someone. How often have you given up because the procedure was challenging, or because there were more alluring distractions? Although choosing quick pleasure often appears easier, we lose out on the opportunity to have a more meaningful experience. The lack of significance that pleasure conveys, when it becomes our exclusive goal, is the issue, not pleasure per se. According to Aristotle, eudaimonia is a condition of happiness that results from always aiming for perfection. However, our society tells us that instant comfort, devoid of labor, is the source of happiness. However, is a life devoid of obstacles or objectives truly satisfying? Or is it really a surface-level existence? We get disconnected from who we really are when we accept distractions as a normal part of life. Instead of reflecting what we truly desire, we end up reflecting what society wants us to be. Many of us feel empty even when we are surrounded by comfort, because we are lacking what we truly need, which is a deeper sense of meaning. This emptiness is not filled by instant pleasure. Rather, it is momentarily concealed. This effect is social as well as personal. A civilization is weakened and less able to reinvent itself when pleasure is valued more highly than purpose. The capacity to produce and dedicate oneself to anything significant vanishes. We passively accept the conditions that are placed upon us, rather than acting. What kind of legacy are we leaving for the next generation then? Are we fostering a culture that prioritizes significance or diversions? Finding a new balance is more important than eliminating pleasure. The biggest obstacle is learning to live a purposeful life while resisting the want for instant gratification. How can we redefine pleasure without allowing it to control us? Only when pleasure is in line with our core beliefs can it be a significant aspect of life. Being more conscious is the first step in making this transformation. How frequently do we make decisions without giving them any thought? We can begin to make more thoughtful decisions instead of being influenced by outside factors. Our actual freedom of action is located in the area that separates impulse from reaction. Mindfulness is an effective way to practice this. We have the option to live more intentionally with every step we take. If we choose to be mindful and in the now, even the smallest pleasures, like a quick stroll or a coffee break, can become significant moments. Furthermore, we must reconsider the function of discomfort. Although society tends to avoid it, discomfort is exactly where we develop. Whoever has a why to live for will endure anyhow, Nietzsche once stated. The joy that results is given greater significance by the effort required to do something worthwhile. Being willing to endure hardships leads to personal development, and it is throughout these trials that we discover a more enduring and fulfilling joy. Redefining pleasure is turning the things that make us happy into more conscious, genuine experiences that are in line with our values, not abandoning them. Intentionally experiencing pleasure can transform it from an endless pursuit that merely consumes us into a crucial component of a more meaningful life. How about taking another step now that we've considered how we may change the way we relate to pleasure and discover more meaning? Join us on this path to live a more honest and purposeful life by subscribing to the channel, turning on the notifications, and watching the next videos. Until we meet again.